Thank you very much. I am absolutely delighted to be part of this symposium. My contributions, I hope, can further several of the incredibly important points that were made previously, that now is the time for action, for taking responsibility, and I would argue for changing the discourse around what needs to be done for human rights and social justice. I'm just advancing my slide. There we go. A little bit of background. My framework, my analysis really was shaped by being a child of my parents. My parents were non-Jewish German resistors to National Socialism. Their experience coming here to Canada meant that their privilege as non-racialized individuals meant that they were welcome to Canada, but there was an expectation that they needed to integrate. As soon as they spoke, and their lack of English and their then subsequent thick accents meant that they were very often othered. The expectation to integrate came at the expense of their credibility was often questioned, their experience was silenced, and there was always an ever-present assumption that they needed to be grateful for calling Canada their new home. My own experience as a child was that I became obsessed as to how it is that the Holocaust could have occurred. And my child's understanding assumed it was a lack of awareness. My adult understanding realized that it is not just a lack of awareness. It was a purposeful, structured, intentional process that was made by individuals to either choose to resist or to choose to remain silent. My discussion today is really about trying to talk about the role of how it is that we understand discourse and challenge discourse in order to create spaces for counter-discourse that are key for social justice. Social theories really help us to understand what is happening in the world in terms of current events, social phenomenon, but not all theories are created equal. Mainstream theories, while they describe and predict and explain and try to manage social phenomenon, often do at the cost of marginalizing individuals who are living with oppression. Critical theories, on the other hand, have a different purpose. Their role is to critique mainstream theories, to offer accessible alternative strategies for a sole purpose, and that is to eradicate oppression and privilege. My own scholarship is informed by this large body, this cluster of critical theories, and there are many. Some of them include theories such as critical race theory, which helps us to understand that racism is a factor in everyday people's experiences, in social processes, in institutions, and in structures. Critical criminology, instead of looking at how it is that individuals may have criminogenic tendencies, look at how the criminal justice system scrutinizes and overrepresents racialized and marginalized groups in criminalizing processes. Similarly, the child welfare system also looks at how it is that racialized families are overrepresented within the child welfare system. Oppression and privilege is important to understand because it interacts at multi-levels. It is not just the case of a few bad apples who have created oppressive or discriminatory instances. It is the case of oppression and discrimination and bigotry being replicated at the cultural level, within social media, within our ideology, within language and discourse that is either replicated and maintained or silenced. And of course, it is maintained at the structural level. Those processes, the legal processes, educational processes, laws and institutions which allow individual attitudes of discrimination to flourish and to continue, but also structural levels are influenced by individuals who either choose to remain silent or choose to challenge those very practices. Discourses are those centers of power which really frame how it is that we think, how it is that we speak, how it is that we write, how it is we understand what is going on. People in power tend to control the dominant discourse. While there are many in our society, those that do not reflect the interests of people in power tend to be pushed to the side or silenced. It creates a situation where some possibilities are presented and others are excluded. And it limits the options and ways in which we think about solutions. Language is incredibly important. It's the piece that connects us to the human community. And while it is incredibly important, as Dr. Buffo has said, we need to move beyond talk. We need to move to action. Language is the piece that helps us to be able to make sense of the world. It is, however, never politically neutral. Language is always tied to power. It is always tied to context. And it is often so taken for granted that the ideological underpinnings are seldom questioned. In fact, while language can describe what's going on, it often creates a hyperreality that silences the experiences of people living with depression. Discourse is a larger body. It is the text. It is the ideology. It is the larger knowledge systems which create and shape our identities and create and shape our ideas. It too is never politically neutral. There are many discourses, but the dominant one works very hard to suppress any discourses which it may perceive as threatening or challenging. It is more powerful than legislation or armies, and it is a contested site for power and conflict. It is precisely because it is a contested site where the opportunity for action appears. It is counter discourses which can unsettle this and which can promote those discourses necessary for social justice, particularly discourses such as a symposium, discourses around Black Lives Matter, discourses about the term systemic racism, discourses about the role of white silence. The fact that we have systemic racism entering the social media discourse, the dominant discourse, I believe is a time right now that is pivotal. It is a tipping point. The danger is that the very weighted responsibility inherent in understanding what systemic racism is has the potential now to become overused and neutralized and diluted. Now is the time for us to be able to challenge and create these very important counter discourses in order to not only make sure that language represent the struggle, and that talk moves into action and responsibility. Thank you very much.